Welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to Gaming. Curseborne, once again, we are getting very, very close now, 1 day away from the Curseborne Kickstarter going live. If you don't want to miss it, if you want to be notified as soon as it goes live and get on when that hype train is rolling, do click the link below to get notified when the campaign starts up. It is super important to all of us at Onyx Path that we get as many people's eyes on this as possible, and one good way of doing that is by signing up as soon as you can so that you don't miss out when the campaign kicks off. Now, I've spoken about Curseborne before many, many times. If you're a subscriber to this channel and have watched any of the videos of the last 2 weeks, I think I probably mentioned Curseborne in, I'd say, about 98% of those videos, if you could divide 14 to result in 98. Doesn't matter. Curseborne. I don't need to explain to you at this point what Curseborne is, I hope, because I've done a video about that last week. Check it out if you haven't. But in this video, I'm going to be talking specifically about the kinds of people you play. What are your characters in Curseborne? Well, in general terms, they are defined as the accursed. All of your characters are people who have become cursed, people who were born cursed, people who have fallen into curses, or people who have emerged from a realm of curses and just happen to be something more or less than human, but we can define broadly as accursed. These accursed make up 5 lineages, which I've mentioned before and I'll get back to in a minute. What does it mean to be one of the accursed? Well, it means you are more aware of the supernatural nature of the Curseborne world. You are going to be able to determine that you are stepping into a liminal space, perhaps, and you may even be able to work out the way out of it. You're going to be able to look at a creature disguised as something else and potentially determine that it all is not as it seems. You are going to be able to wield curses as weapons, along with spells and inheritances that have been passed down to you from other accursed in your lineage. Being an accursed is a blighted role, don't get me wrong. There are negatives to it, hence the word curse. You will have various, not only obligations put on you by your accursed family, but also you are going to be more prone to getting snared, entangled in the curses of the world. Sometimes that's going to result in great power boosts for you. Other times it's just going to result in trouble being attracted to you. This is often emulated in our system for Curseborne through wicked successes and cruel failures. What are they? Well, in simple terms, because this isn't a system video, every character starts with 1 curse die at the beginning of their story. If I'm rolling a dice pool of 6 dice, let's say athletics plus dexterity is 6 dice, one of those dice, as I have a curse die, is a curse die. If I have 2 curse dice because I've done something else to qualify for more, now 2 of those 6 are curse dice. And hopefully you can see what I'm talking about here. And again, in simple terms, if you roll a success, if you get all your hits and you get a success, and some of those hits are from your curse dice, congratulations, that's a wicked success. You will manipulate the curse in a way that benefits you, hopefully, or spreads the curse. If you fail, including your curse dice, well, that's a cruel failure and things will go badly. This is a rather seamless system. This is not adding dice on. It is not going to compel you to do something you don't want to do. It is a lot like an extension to the enhancements and complication system that's already present in StoryPath Ultra to make the narrative a little more interesting, that you can basically put down and pick up as you choose. It isn't a mandatory part of every single dice roll. But anyway, that's swift tangent into systems notwithstanding. Accursed come together in families first, well, lineages first, then families, then crews. Let's talk about crews, because in the core book for Curseborne, we are focused very much on that crew tier of play. This is what bond the accursed to each other. We were very conscious when creating Curseborne that there are lots of horror games out there, and some of them I have worked on, as you well know, where it is incredibly easy for characters to think very selfishly, Why would I do that? That's not in my character's interest, my own interest. Therefore, I'm not going to help these people out. They're almost games that encourage rivalries within your character parties and even hatreds and trying to screw each other over rather than assistance, mutual benefit, the idea of we're only as strong as the sum of our parts rather than I can go and face this alone. An example I gave in the Onyx Path Discord recently is one of the reasons for that, and there's several reasons why a cursed might come together in a crew, simplest of which is when you're cursed, you are going to be attracted to meeting others like you, otherwise it can feel very solitary. Someone in the Onyx Path Discord asked, why wouldn't an accursed go it alone? And mentioned some of the antagonists, some of the adversary types as archons, which is a separate video entirely. And I pointed out, well, as a crew of accursed, you stand a good chance of taking that Archon down a peg or two, driving them back to the outside, realms beyond liminal space that are completely beyond mortal understanding and survival. These kinds of creatures delve into our world, try and change it, try and take slaves, try and take captives, try and mutilate the world in a way that fits their curse. Well, as a crew, you might be able to drive that Archon back. As an individual, the Archon's going to flatten you. So there is a world of opposition out there that drives you together. But it isn't just obligation, it isn't just need that makes you work together. It is also affection, it's mutual suffering, it is the fact that you understand each other in a way that others won't. And what's more, there is a hierarchy, because in each of the families, typically the elder types, your aldermen, your oldest ancestors that are still with us, and in the case of the hungry and the dead, that can be quite a lot, are going to be pulling strings, they're going to be making you do things you don't want to do, and they're going to be trying to generally make the shit roll downhill and land squarely on your face. Well, if you find a crew, you can fight back against that. You can make your own path that isn't set for you by ancestors who barely know you and just see you as a stereotype, just see you as another hot-headed, young accursed. With a crew, you can make a difference. So not just in the world, not just ethically, not just pushing back monsters, but also resisting the monsters above your head who share your name, who share your curse or a variation of it. I don't think we should put aside the fact that accursed will often come together for reasons of friendship and shared interest. Now, this isn't necessarily just going to be you all like to go to the cinema and watch the same movies, or you all like having a drink. Or it's not just going to be something like, I don't know, you all knew each other before you were cursed and now you are. All of that sometimes feels a little forced when you try and come up with something like that. So what I tend to do in my games, not only of Curseborne, but other games, but Curseborne is a particularly good way of doing this, is everyone has a connection to at least two other members of the crew, but it doesn't have to have a connection to everyone. So, for instance, Jack may be best friends, may have been best friends all his life with Sophie, and he may have worked or been a client of Bill over here. Well, Bill is the lover of Agatha, and, as we've already established, he was once the employer of Jack. Now, Agatha may have once sold some occult books to Sophie, and Sophie may use Agatha as a source of occult books, and as we know, Sophie has this long-term friendship with Jack. And so the connection becomes more of a circle, a web, than, let's say, everyone is best friends with everyone else. That gets a bit dull. Anyway, the Accursed as Entanglement 1 characters, and this is your tier of play, Entanglement 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all present in the Curseborne core book, are often what in horror games are referred to as street-level protagonists. By the time you're Entanglement 3 or 4, that's probably not truly the case, and you can ascend up that pretty rapidly too. But the point being that a lot of your concerns, a lot of the things that you are fighting against, a lot of the things you are trying to obtain for yourself, things like territory, things like trying to drive back monsters that aren't necessarily godlike but are definitely threatening to humans who cannot perceive the accursed easily, well, those are the kinds of things you're going to be dealing with. You will often be treated, maybe not like dirt, but certainly with disrespect by other members of your family. And this is a chance for you to carve out a niche for yourself. You can carve out territory, you can carve out influence, you can carve out a liminal space, a place that humans are unlikely to access with any ease, and if they do, it's probably going to be accidental or because you lured them there, that you can call your own. And from there, you can build your base. And anyone who knows my work on the world below will know I'm very fond of that kind of base building aspect. And I think in your cities in Curseborne, you're going to see quite a lot of that. You're going to see districts that are shaped by being either dominated by a certain lineage or a particular family, or a certain crew that is maybe a mix of families and lineages, or maybe a mono family. That is entirely up to you. One thing that got asked quite a lot in the comments of my previous Curseborne video, what is Curseborne, was is this game designed to be a mixed a monster mash, I think it was called, where you could have an outcast, a sorcerer, a dead, and a hungry all in the same group. And absolutely, there will be parts of an actual play I've recorded going up on this channel as well as over on Onyx Path that demonstrates that you can play this game with mixed lineages just as easily as you can with mono lineages. In one game, the players are the roles of a primal, a hungry, an outcast, and a dead. In the other game I ran, which I also hope to get uploaded, we've got two sorcerers along with, and I want to get this right, along with a primal and a hungry. So there's different combinations, and unlike other games that I've run before, there's no mechanical breakdown, and there's also no hard, fast reason why werewolves should want to tear the throats out of vampires or something like that. Certainly, family rivalries exist, even lineage rivalries might exist, and hatreds may exist as well. But your characters, as the accursed, can fight against that. You do not have to conform to the stereotype of, let's say, the Get of Lyca not liking the heirs much. The Get of Lyca are a primal family. The heirs are a very, you might call them highfalutin, family of hungry, of heart eaters. For various reasons, the two do not see eye to eye, but that doesn't mean that their descendants can't work together, because why would I share the stereotypes, the bigotry, the prejudices of people who were born 200, 300 years before me? So I mentioned lineages and families, and as I said in the What is Curseborne video, you have in the core book 5 lineages. You have your hungry. So your hungry are all accursed who are craving something unnatural. So yes, you have your vampire types. You have everyone there can drink blood for sustenance. And I would say that the family that is most akin to the traditional vampire type is probably House Bathory, because although they can drink blood, they prefer to bathe in blood. And I think Elizabeth Bathory is a very archetypal vampire. But then you have your more ritualistic sacrifices for power, hunger for power family like the heirs. They can drink blood as well. All of them can drink blood, but the heirs favour devouring hearts, because when they devour a heart, they devour power. Then you have your Shang Tsung-like family in the form of the Varari, who through infernal means are soul eaters. They will, again, subsist off blood if they want to, but they love the taste of souls. They want to consume souls. We have the Gaki. They eat spirits and the dead. We have, well, not necessarily the lineage, although that is another cause for some consternation between Gaki and various dead families, as you'd imagine. And the Iscariots, our cannibals, if indeed it is a cannibal when you're hungry to eat a mortal, through some weird religious desire for penitence, some relationship with the communion, they want to eat flesh. They will eat the flesh of the deserving, of the guilty. They will consume it and they will purify it by doing so. So you've got all your hungry families, and then you have your primal families as well. And believe me, I'm going to miss some of these out each time. For instance, I didn't detail the black hearts. I think I spoke about them last time, but I'm giving you an overview. So for instance, the primal, last time I spoke about the primal, I didn't talk about the hides. So I'll mention them a little in a moment, but I think a way to mistake the primal is to just look at them as shapeshifters. Yes, they can shift shape, but automatically they do not shift into a base animal. They shift into a terrifying chimerical beast, because a primal is something that predates humanity in a lot of ways. They are creatures of myth, of terror, of nightmare. And so, while a Get of Lyca's wild form is going to have certain wolf aspects, they're going to have other aspects to them as well. Elemental aspects. This is the thing I really like to drive home about the primal. The idea that they are primal in more ways than simply animalistic. They are elemental. They are tempestuous. They are unchained. And by this, I mean, yes, your Get of Lyca are likely to feel like raging infernos or terrible thunderstorms, all the way through to your Sphinx, who is going to be more like the air, more like something fluid, more water-based, something flexible that will strike only when it is suitable. And then, of course, as I mentioned, you have your hides. Your hides are less animalistic and more, I guess you could say, depending on the hide you meet, proto-human or indeed future human. The hides experiment with the human form. They want to ascend to a new form of being. They want to evolve, maybe force evolution, and so they play around with their mutation. Their wild form is something absolutely terrible. I compare it in a way to the Hulk, or indeed the leader from the Hulk, if you're familiar with that tall-headed monster. And I think any of the variants of the various Incredible Hulk villains, the ones who have that gamma radiation effect, are a really good way of looking at the hides. And clearly, the primal do have certain territorial ambitions, and because they have that primal aspect, it is sometimes primitive in aspect, but it is also quite pure. So the primals are one of my favourite lineages in the game. I think they really get the message across of something that isn't tied necessarily to a certain aspect of nature, let's say, or spirituality. Rather, they each have their own focus that makes them a devastating force that they focus on. Now, moving on, we have the sorcerers. And I should point out, the hungry and the primal can inherit their curses in various ways. Yes, they could inherit it from an actual ancestor, or they could cross the wrong animal. They could receive a curse from a sorcerer, some kind of witch that they spoke badly of or ignored one time when they were in need. Or it could be via the traditional method, the bite, in both cases. So you can go that way. Just because we refer to lineages and families doesn't mean all accursed are linked biologically. I think that's an important thing to note, because it's something I've been asked. Is every family this sort of incestuous biological group? By no means. Although there are some, the spawn of Vodnik, which is one of the families of the primal, are all biologically linked. They are, in fact, one of the very few who are. Maybe that explains some of their appearance traits. So the sorcerers, let's talk about the sorcerers, because in stark contrast to the hungry and the primal, who might gain their curses inadvertently, the vast majority of sorcerers enter into their curses willingly, because to do so is to grant themselves access to greater power. They believe it is a sacrifice worth making, and the sorcerers are all about sacrifice. What are they prepared to give up in order to gain an ounce more power? And each of the sorcerers has a different focus there. The kinds of things they like to sacrifice, whether it's friendships, whether it's memories, whether it happens to be blood. All of the sorcerer families lean a different way like that. And I think it really gives them an awful lot of flavour. And given that they are entering into these pacts willingly, a lot of our characters, a lot of our recurs from other families are going to be looking at sorcerers like they are either idiots or megalomaniacs or both, and I think that adds an interesting shade to things. I'm especially fond of the Network, which is one of our sorcerer families who believe that the power of information is basically the power over the world. If they know all of the world's secrets, and they share this to a degree with the archivists, then they, which is another sorcerer family, then they can dominate everything, including the outside, where the more threatening supernatural creatures, the creatures actually born from curses as opposed to bearing curses, live. Live may be the wrong word, exist. And the difference there between the archivists and the network, the strongest one I would suggest, is secrets allow the network to manipulate people, whereas the archivists believe secrets allow them to manipulate information. Now, we have various other sorcerer families, and I can't spend all video talking about every single family, although, as you can probably tell, I get quite enthusiastic when talking about Curseborne because it's been a lot of fun to work on. It's been a huge amount of fun to run it, which is clearly a good thing. It has its mix of horror and fantasy and fun, and I think that is a lovely blend. You know, you need to occasionally leaven the darkness with some dark humor. And each of these families, even how you may have gained a curse or how you might use your spells, your inheritances and so forth, can be channeled in a way that is more entertaining than traumatic. But speaking of trauma, let's talk about the outcasts, because the outcasts are accursed who don't even know it until their face falls off. I mean, that sounds like a grotesque possibility, but it is an actual literal possibility for the outcasts that at some point they just realize they are not human, they have never been human, and their mask drops. And everyone around them runs away screaming. Their family that they have built realizes, oh God, Daddy isn't who he said he was. The outcasts were born or created, or at least their ancestors were, in the outside. So they can be everything from demonic or angelic to fey or eldritch. The outcasts are creatures who do not belong in our world, but have either been banished there or exiled, or they fled there. These are the kinds of secrets you're going to be pursuing in Curseborne, and that is one of the things you do in Curseborne. You are going to be unraveling mysteries by discovering secrets, clues about yourselves, and also about your families, as well as liminalities, these between spaces, and then further, the outside itself, alien worlds, if you like. And the outcasts are one of my favourite families is the Battleground Angels, the Paladins, who genuinely believe themselves to be angels, who were exiled by evil, corrupt forces, and it is their duty to force them back in a righteous crusade. Now, the vast majority of outcasts don't necessarily have this incredibly intense righteousness to them, but all of them share the belief that the outside was at some point theirs, and now they are stuck here. Some of them make the best of it, some of them even like it, but others want their home back. We can even look at some of the families, like I love the League of the Hidden Crossroads and the Munificents, who are two sides of the same coin in many ways. They love making deals, love making pacts that can in turn assist others through a form called curse binding, one of our magic systems in Curseborne. They want to find that musician in the corner of the road, or the crossroads in the case of the League, and offer him the chance to become an unparalleled artisan of the guitar, only for one or two favours in return. If the sorcerer is the guitarist, then the outcast is the devil making the deal. I'm a big fan of the outcasts. I think there's a lot you can play with the idea of discovering you are not who you thought you were. You can really delve into some personal trauma with that. Or, on the other hand, it doesn't have to be traumatic. It can be a revelation. It can be discovery and wonderful. So, yeah, the outcasts are up there as one of my favourite lineages. But then we have the dead. And the Dead were the first lineage I had a stab at writing for Curseborne. Now, there's been lots of authors on Curseborne. We pulled an awful lot of ideas before coming up with our final work. The Dead were my lineage to write, first of all, so I've got a lot of investment in them. And I am particularly fond of these people who have died, and the first thing they are left to inhabit and possess is usually their own corpse, providing it is in a state to possess and have walk around, puppeteer, if you will. If that body isn't around, well, you've got to find a cadaver. You've got to hope it's a fresh one, because if it isn't, you're going to be clawing out of the ground like a zombie, or even a skeleton, or perhaps a mummy. Hopefully you can see some of the undead inspirations for the Dead, because unlike our traditional undead, the Dead are definitely dead. They're not coming back. There's no point aspiring to. They are fully aware that the bodies they are animating, even though they can make them breathe and they can make the blood flow and they can make them look alive, will slowly fall to bits as soon as their eye drifts off the ball. So eventually, as a Dead gets more and more powerful, they're going to look to possess inanimate objects. A ventriloquist dummy, a car, like in Christine, although I think Christine is more of a demon car, and going all the way up to eventually possessing the living, which, as you can imagine, is probably a pretty terrible thing to do, but most Dead do it with the permission of the host. Most of them do. So, we have our Dead, and they are the way the Dead survive is, or at least the way they develop power, and this is distinct from the Black Heart Hungry, who feed on emotion. Is the Dead just need emotion around them, and they kind of live through others. I guess they live through others via osmosis. So in other words, the different Dead families, who are all keyed to a different emotion or experience, need to be around that experience, ideally, to feel their power grow. The poltergeists are drawn to fear, the Furies anger, as the name implies, and revenge, all the way through to the Mavens, who crave joy and excitement, satisfaction. The Zeds, maybe the strangest of the families, crave nothing but the end. They crave nihilism, the feeling of absolute peace. I mean, if at a meditative spa, the Zeds would be perfectly at home. And I imagine other people there would be at home, because the Zeds are known as dead assassins. They are reapers. They want to bring people to their natural conclusion. And if they have lived an unnaturally long time, well, time for an unnatural conclusion. So we have there our Hungry, our Primals, our Sorcerers, our Outcasts, our Dead. These are our 5 lineages. Within each of them you have multiple families, and within each of those families you've got multiple types of character you can build. I appreciate that a lot of people watching this will think, how can you present a book where all of these character options are different, are distinct, provide enough information for me to go on? Well, every single family has its own spread, has its own write-up. Believe me, we have accounted for it. Plus, there are powers that are unique to each family. Plus, the distinctions within each family of what you can play differ. Now, while there's definitely some crossover between lineages, so for instance, the 8 Hands are a secret and information gathering primal family, and a network, if you will, a cartel-like family. There is some crossover there with the Network for the Sorcerers, who likewise like to accumulate and hoard information, and the Archivists, also sorcerers. So there is going to sometimes be overlap. They are not all unique, because the world of Curseborne is meant to feel perhaps a little less cartoonish than some of the horror worlds we've worked with in the past. There is no point every single family feeling like they can't interblend with each other, because having those similarities of purpose, of philosophy, ethos, whatever, is one of those reasons to go back to the formation of a crew, why a crew might come together. You are all fixated, for instance, on solving mysteries. So you get together, you hire out a van, you paint your sign on the side of it, and the mystery machine is ready to go in your game of Curseborne. But when I say they're not unique, that it does not mean that they are lacking their own unique flavours. They all have it. It's just interests can cross over, because that creates a good reason for characters to come together. So these are the characters you play in Curseborne. You play accursed from each of these families. You form a crew with like-minded accursed. And through that, you will fight back against the families trying to put you down. You will drive back monsters into the outside. You will track down people who have gone missing in liminalities. You will solve mysteries behind liminal spaces, shattered spaces, interstitial zones, epochs, and other oddities, phenomena. You will look into not just crimes, you're not just crime fighters. I want to get that clear. Mysteries is the best word for it, because what you are most interested in is getting answers, because it's through answers, it's through that intelligence, it's through your development of power. And the best way to get power, just ask a member of the network, is to get those secrets. Well, once you have that, then you're going to start ascending in entanglement. You're going to start dealing with worse and worse things. All the while, you have to combat, conflict, resist those damnations that are afflicting you and the torments that you can choose to invoke to give yourself those curse dice to enable you to use more powers, and so on and so forth. So this is a game that has mystery, it has politics, it has action. There's a hell of a lot of adversaries in there. I know, I wrote a lot of them. And it also has all of those things you like about horror, of trauma, personal loss, personal attachments, your bonds to other people, to places, to things of importance. So this has been a very long video, maybe the longest one I've done in quite a while, and I hope it's been interesting and educating. The accursed you play will be different from the accursed the guy down the road plays, I hope. I'm sure they will be, because there's so many options in this game. But you won't get choice paralysis, because the directions we give are very clear. And I hope that you have a lot of fun with your games of Curseborne. Remember, it's coming to Kickstarter tomorrow. The link will be in the description below. Please click on it and get notified when that campaign goes live. I would love to hear about what kind of character you are interested in playing in Curseborne. So comment below to tell me which family appeals to you, what kind of character appeals to you. I want to know. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.